What's going on, YouTube? Team G Sale back with another video, guys. This is going to be the second installment in my board game collection series. I did one a while back on vintage cartoon video game, or board games, I should say, sorry. And this is my follow-up one on video game board games. I'm going to have to practice that because I'm going to be saying it a few times. So the board games I reviewed today are board games based off of video games. Okay, so this is totally different than the one I did before. These are games, and I wanted to pick exclusives. So what I meant by that is there are a lot of things that came out and then became video games. I wanted to choose board games that were always board games and then, always video games first and then became board games. I'm going to be getting mixed up with my board game video game, I'm sure, in this video, but either way, if you haven't already subscribed, guys, hit the subscribe button. I'm working my way towards 400 subscribers, and if you watch my last video, I am going to be doing a free video game giveaway once I hit 400 subscribers. Smash the like button to show some support, and comment, did you ever play any of these video games? Have you seen them before? Are there any video game board games that I missed? I'm going to be doing, this is part one because there is more I'm going to be adding into part two. So if you watched the last video, I want to show you the board game, give a little bit of history behind the franchise, and then show you some shots of me playing the board game, as well as my final reflections on whether it's worth picking up or not. And this time around, I did 5 board games. There's about 10 in total. There's probably some I don't have as well. And I played them with my 10-year-old son, figuring because they're all around that age of around his level of playing. My 5-year-old was a little too young for some of these games. And yeah, otherwise, guys, let's just jump right into it. And we're going to be starting with a board game based on a video game that everyone, I don't care who you are, you know this one. And that, my friends, is, I'm going to be careful because my box is kind of damaged on this one, unfortunately, is Pac-Man. Let's see if I can get it right there.
As soon as I eat that power block, you guys are finished! Drop Atari Pac-Man into your Atari video computer system and you're playing the hottest game since Space Invaders, Atari Pac-Man. I got Pac-Man fever. It's driving me crazy. By Atari.
I found this board game, thankfully, at a garage sale for $5. It was an excellent price. This is a Milton Bradley game. Milton Bradley made a lot of really terrible licensed games. This actually isn't one of them. Now, if you don't know much about Pac-Man, it's one of the most iconic arcades of all time. Originally released in Japan, what happened is Namco bought out Atari of Japan and wanted to create some new arcade games that weren't so heavily targeted to men. They had already had classics like Space Invaders and Breakout, and they wanted games that targeted more women and more families and younger couples, as opposed to games that they viewed as more violent, like Space Invaders. I mean, it's kind of funny thinking Space Invaders is violent today, but that was the image they were going for. So the game was created, originally called Pac-Man, and I'm not 100% here, but I believe the translation was something to opening and closing the mouth of the character. So the game took 1 year and 5 months to develop, which is at the time the longest it took a video game to be developed. It had decent reviews in Japan. The American market is where they really wanted to hit with this game. Originally, it was proposed to Midway, which was the American branch here. This game and another game called Rally X, they didn't actually expect this game to do very well, but it turned out to be an amazing hit. And in 1982, 2 years after its arcade release, it was ported to a ton of different consoles, including the most notorious one, the Atari 2600, which was the version I played growing up, and it was terrible. They couldn't get the Pac-Man to actually be round. It just looked brutal. It was not good at all. And either way, a board game adaptation seemed interesting, based on the fact that it was such a huge success and everyone knew what it was. But otherwise, that's sort of some history behind the franchise. Let's just get into some actual gameplay and see what you guys think.
Alright guys, so here's the Pac-Man game here by Milton Bradley, and here's just kind of a overshot of the board here and the box as well. It's I mean, it looks like a Pac-Man game. It's pretty pretty much just like you'd see in the arcade, which is kind of cool that they kept it like that. You get these mover pieces. They don't exactly look like Pac-Man figures, but they do the job. They kind of look like, they have fangs instead of things, but the game is very simple. You roll the dice. One die allows you to move, and you move the amount of spaces and eat the white marbles. As you can tell, it's not always easy to collect them. Sometimes they pop out. You got to there's a system to it. My son actually was a lot better at it than I was. When you're done your turn, you can empty the marbles into your little container there. And the second dice allows you to move the ghost, and you kind of want to move the ghost to get in position to attack your opponent. You basically go around the board. If you collect the yellow marbles, that allows you to get away from the ghost. So if you collect a yellow one and then the ghost attacks you, you can use that to send the ghost back to the beginning there. And the game goes on. The winner is the one with the most marbles. So generally speaking, that's how the game is played. It's pretty straightforward, but really it's not a bad game, and they kept it really, really simple. So there's Pac-Man by Milton Bradley.
Now, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you here. I think this game is good. I do. I think it's ambitious. It's very tactile. There's a lot of pieces to play around with. I played this with this one I did play with my 5-year-old, and he really liked it. The strategy was a little tough for him, but it was a really good, fun game. It didn't take too long to do. It went relatively quick. The pieces are very colorful. It looks like the Pac-Man board. I know in AVGN's video he says when he reviewed this that what's the point, just play the video game. But I honestly think there is something to be said about this one. It's much better than some of the other video game board games that I'm going to be showing and that I've played. I think it's it's quick. It doesn't bog you down too much. There isn't overcomplicated rules like you're going to see in some of these other games. The rules are very simple, very easy to follow. And the game actually the hard part is actually getting the characters to eat the marbles. They often fall out, and then you mess things up on the board. If there was a way to make the board a bit bigger and space them out a bit more, I think that would have solved some problems. But overall, it's actually pretty good. Other than that, I think this game, if I had to rate it out of 5, I'd say this is like a 3.5 out of 5. It's actually a really game worth playing. The values vary between $20 to $40 on eBay. I'd say if you find this game for cheap, or if you want to pick it up for $20 on eBay, it's a good buy. It's a good family game, and I highly recommend it. Alright guys, the second game on my list is also another classic arcade game. This game was originally a comic strip that got ported into an actual arcade game, and then very shortly after into a board game. And the one I'm talking about is Popeye.
My turn. My turn. This new Popeye video game has the boys fighting worse than ever. Oh, Popeye. It's my game. It's got 3 screens just like the arcade. Watch out! Yikes! Uh-oh. Fight like a man. Where's me spinach? Yeah! You choke, you wimp. I ain't wimpy. I'm much better looking.
The new Popeye video game, available for most popular home video and computer systems.
Now, this board game was released in 1983 by Parker Brothers, and it was about a year after the video game was released. So this is actually, unlike the Pac-Man game that came out a little bit later, this one came out pretty recently. And unlike the Pac-Man game, this is Parker Brothers, which isn't strange because Parker Brothers handled a lot of the console ports of Popeye, with the exception of the NES version that was handled by Nintendo itself. Now, the arcade was released in 1982, same year as Pac-Man, and the arcade game was, instead of being released by Namco Midway, this was actually released by Nintendo. It was an interesting platforming little game, which was in some ways similar to Donkey Kong. A lot of people didn't like the fact that they found too many similarities between that and Donkey Kong. I actually found it to be quite different. My first actual experience playing it was in the arcade, but I did play it again on the NES when it came out, which wasn't a bad port. It was one of the black box releases, the early releases of the system. So I thought it was an actually pretty fun arcade game. And of course, I really love the comic strips and of course the black and white animation videos of Popeye as well. Kind of one that holds a special place in my heart. And the board game itself seemed also like a really good fit. There was memorable characters. There was a way for this to be actually a really fun game. So let's jump into some gameplay and we'll go from there. Check it out.
Alright guys, well here's the Popeye game. Love the box art, by the way, really colorful, looks great. Parker Brothers did some really cool box art. I would kind of like theirs sometimes better than Milton Bradley. The game itself, the board for the game, I should say, is really colorful, really detailed, and really kind of depicts the game well. It's got the 3 levels, the houses on the top, and again, Popeye's house. Even though you never actually go up there, there's olive oil, and there's the hearts, and these are what you're going to be collecting to win the game. There's the Popeye character, Brutus character, and yeah, that's basically it for characters. One starts inside of the house. You roll the dice. One person controls olive oil, and then that with the red dice, red die, I should say, they drop hearts down. If you roll an even number, it goes on the even side, odd number on the odd side. Just like that. Pretty straightforward. Now, the next person would then roll and move Popeye. Popeye is going to go around the board. If he goes into these stairway areas, he can pick up these barrel cards. And sometimes they give you an extra roll, sometimes you don't get nothing. If a can of spinach appears, then you could roll again. If it's just a barrel, you don't go again. What you want to do is essentially move to the spaces and get the hearts before they move down and touch the water. The next character controls Brutus, or the other player controls Brutus, and Brutus is basically trying to get to you, and if he gets you, you go back to the start, and the next player then takes over. Olive oil keeps moving hearts down, and if you don't catch them before the bottom, they go out of play. And if they go out of play, unfortunately, they're gone, and you won't be able to use them again. Brutus then one player will control Popeye and keep moving on, and then Brutus. The hearts have values under them, so at the end of the game, you flip them over, add up the values, and the player with the highest value wins. I should also mention that there's the sea hag, which is here on the side, and if Brutus can't catch Popeye on his turn, he can flip over the sea hag card, and if it's the sea hag with a bottle, then Popeye loses and goes back to the start. And you just keep playing back and forth, going around with one player controlling olive oil, one player controlling Popeye, and one player controlling Brutus. That's all there for Popeye.
My final thoughts on Popeye is this game is awesome. It's actually probably one of the better board games I've played. I played it with my 10-year-old, and I'm going to be honest with you, there's a lot of rules, and it will bog you down pretty quickly. The instruction manual isn't really helpful. It can actually be overly convoluted and confusing, but once you start playing through it, it's actually really, really fun. The idea that you're bouncing between the 2 players, essentially trying to get the most hearts, and then you don't even know if those hearts are worth 1 point or 2 points or 3 points, so you really don't know until the end. It keeps you really on your toes, and as the game gets further on, it moves a lot quicker, and you're bouncing back and forth because there's very limited hearts for you to get, and by that point Brutus is already at a place on the board where you're compromised. I think this game is, I would put it like near the top, like 4.5 out of 5. This game's awesome, and it's not an expensive one. I found mine on Kijiji for $8. If you can find a copy for cheap, or even if it's 20 or 30, I think this game's worth it, especially if you have kids. It's really, really fun, and it moves really, really fast as well. The second we were done, he's like, can we play again? And normally he doesn't like to replay games right away, so that's saying a lot. Popeye, in my opinion, an awesome board game, and I highly suggest picking it up if you get a chance. Alright guys, the third game on my list is totally different from the last 2 previous ones I just did. We are going really modern with this game. This is a board game that came out in 2018, so it's very recent. It's only a couple years old. And the game I'm talking about here is Fortnite Monopoly Edition. Now, I'm going to go right on a limb here and say this is not a game I am very versed in. I have played it. My son is obsessed with it. He plays it nonstop. He could tell you everything about this game you want to know, but I'm going to come at this from more of an adult point of view and talk a little bit about it. So the game comes out in 2017 by Epic Games. It is a sensation, a phenomenon. Like, you can't go anywhere. I'm a teacher, and all the kids in middle school were talking when it first came out about Fortnite. I played it. It's a first-person shooter. I don't mind it. I don't like the building element of it. I found that I was more of a Call of Duty player, so while I thought it was a good game, I didn't think it was an excellent game. But I understand the attraction to it, and my son still loves it and still thinks I'm crazy for not loving it. But again, I'm older, and there's other games I like better. But that being said, 1 year later, Monopoly released seemed interesting. How are they going to convert Monopoly into Fortnite? Now, there are hundreds of Monopoly variants, and I've played a lot of them. And that being said, this is by far one of the best ones I've played, and I am not exaggerating that. While I may not be a fan of the video game, the board game is definitely worth picking up. So let's check out some gameplay, and I'll give some final thoughts at the end.
All right, guys, here's Monopoly Fortnite, and the box actually is really colorful, really nice looking. Mine's a mint copy, as I got mine pretty much brand new. It was still pretty much sealed and unpunched inside. It's a very different Monopoly than you're going to see. First of all, there's no money is one thing you're going to notice, because you don't need money in this game. What you're trying to get is health points. Here's some of the cards that come with it, and then some wall pieces, as well as storm cards. Again, no money in this game. All you have here is health points, and it should have a custom action die and a regular die. The board also is quite a bit different, and here's the characters. There's way too many, in fact. We stood them all up with bases. I don't know why they give you so much of a selection of characters, but it is what it is. So you pick your characters, and you roll and move around the board. You don't need to buy properties because there is no money, so when you land on them, you just simply take the property. And if someone lands on your property, they lose health points that go to the bank in the middle. Once you run out of health points, you're done. The game's over. Now, the interesting thing about this game is there's an action die on your turn, which allows you to heal, get health points, or to hurt other players, which is a great way to knock them out of the game. The really twister is these storm cards. When you pull these storm cards, it will slowly close off sections of the board, including properties, even including go or go to jail. And at the end of the game, it's essentially whoever runs out of health points first. You can get wall cards to block people, essentially, but I think the game moves quick, and I like it. It's fun. It's a really cool twist on Monopoly. I highly recommend it to anyone who likes Fortnite and Monopoly.
I got my copy for $4.99 at a Value Village. I bought it because my son likes Fortnite. I thought, hey, I'll get it for him. It sat on my shelf for a while. He didn't have any interest in playing it. Either did I. Eventually, he asked if we could play it. We set it up. I had low expectations going in because I wasn't a huge fan of the game. It looked very confusing from normal Monopoly. And if you're looking for a normal Monopoly experience, this game is not for you. The fact that they even branded it Monopoly is kind of interesting because there's very little Monopoly elements in it. Overall, besides maybe the buying of properties and the fact that you can get cards. But the fact that the storm is always deleting spaces from the board makes it go quick. And that's one thing I've always hated about Monopoly. The game just takes too long. I really prefer my games to be somewhat quicker, and this is what you'll get from this game. It is pretty exciting, pretty fun. I'd give it a 4 out of 5. I think it's a really good pickup, and this is coming from a guy who isn't a huge Fortnite fan. I think it's a fun game. It's not hard to figure out. My one big complaint is that they give you way too many character choices. There was no need to have that many characters. It just makes things weird. But other than that, I think the gameplay is great. Graphics are pretty colorful. It's simple. It's easy to pick up. Once you figure out how the storm works and knocks things out, it makes things go quicker and quicker. There's no money involved, so you're not bogged down with someone being a banker and counting up money all the time. You just have chips that are health chips, essentially, or HP chips. I think it's great, and honestly, this game is one you should pick up if you can find it, especially if you're looking for a quick experience, or if you have a Fortnite fan in the family. Maybe they'll like it for a gift. Either way, guys, let's move on to the fourth of our reviews. Okay, guys, we're going back to the 1980s for a vintage board game for our next pickup. This game was also released in 1982, the year I was born. Very popular year for video games, sorry, I should say arcade games. And this board game came out a year later in 1983. The game I'm talking about this time around is Qbert.
I'm Qbert, and I've got all the right moves. I've got the legs, too. First an arcade game, now my own home video game. I'm ready for anything. Staying away from creeps like Ugg and Coily takes a quick mind and lots of fancy footwork. The longer I hop around, the more they're out to get me. Ugh! When they said fame would go to my head, they weren't kidding.
Now for all popular systems.
Not easy being Qbert, but it's fun.
Now, Qbert is a very, very fun game. I never played the arcade version myself, but I did play the Atari 2600 port and the NES port, and I always found it a very, very fun game. My kids know it because Qbert was in Wreck-It Ralph. I know, it's kind of funny, but it was. Either way, Qbert was released by Gottlieb, which made a ton of different arcades. This is probably their most notable one, though. The game had really favorable reviews upon release. It came out in the actual stand-up arcade and the cocktail cabinet arcade as well. well. And to this day, it's probably their most successful arcade. The board game came out in 1983 by Parker Brothers and tried to mimic the gameplay of the actual arcade game itself. That being said, let's check out some gameplay and I'll come back at the end with my final thoughts.
All right, guys, so here's Qbert, a nice little box. Again, Parker Brothers had a nice way of doing box art, I find, in my personal opinion. So let's take a look here at the board. It looks like a Qbert game. It's actually pretty darn good. They've got the hexagonal block, not hexagonal blocks, but the cube 3D blocks. They've got the two enemies there, Wrong Way and Coily. They have the spinning disc that you can jump on, and of course the pegs that you'll collect as you go. Here's the pawns here. They're actually kind of cool. They got little stickers on them. I mean, you know, they got the red ball, the green ball, the main characters, as well as Qbert, and 3 dice, including 1 custom die that you'll need to play the game. And of course, this is the dice hider that you're going to roll your die into when you play as Qbert. So essentially the goal of the game is you and the second player are teaming off, taking turns playing Qbert, and the player who gets the most pegs at the end wins. So what you do is when you're Qbert, you just simply roll the dice, but you roll it into your little hiding die hider, and you can use some of your rolls and then some of your rolls later to escape, and that way you can show the person later. The opponent will roll the enemy die, and he'll move that enemy so many spaces. Basically, if you're the opponent, you want to try to get Qbert so he can, you can switch turns. And there's Qbert's die there. Like I said, you can use like 1 roll and then save 2 for later to try to escape the enemies. Unfortunately, the enemies all move in different ways. They all can do different things. The game is actually quite confusing. My son did not like it. About halfway through, we were pretty much ready to give up the game. I just think any game where you need to keep referencing back to a sheet about enemies is just, I don't know, I just think they did that wrong. And unfortunately, this game just wasn't what I was expecting it to be, despite the fact that it looks really good.
All right, guys, I played this board game with my 10-year-old, and I got to be honest with you, this game is not good. Like, really not good. I'm probably going to put this game somewhere in like a 2 out of 5 range. It's not unplayable, but it's not fun. There's a lot of rules. The bad guys all move in different directions. You need like a little guide to tell you what the bad guys do. I hate games that do that to you, where you need to like refer back to a guide all the time to what the actual enemies do. It just makes it overly convoluted and hard to play. The board is cool. I like the way they tried to stick with the actual arcade components in the game. It just was confusing, and it wasn't a really fun game. They went back to that same style as Popeye, where you play as the good guy then the bad guy and back and forth. But I just didn't like it. The idea that you roll your dice into a tube and you can... That was actually kind of interesting, the way you can sort of plan moves, but I just didn't like it. He didn't like it. We almost wanted to give up about halfway through because it was just getting boring. I really wouldn't recommend this board game. I got this on Kijiji for $5. If you happen to find a copy, great, but I wouldn't recommend it as just a game that you'd want to pick up and play. Either way, guys, let's move on to the final game in our review. All right, guys, the final game in my review this time around is another classic arcade game released in 1983 and ported to a number of different consoles. However, it wouldn't get ported into most of the 8-bit consoles. Do not count the NES one. That is a horrible port of the game. But the game I'm talking about is Dragon's Lair.
Dragon's Lair, a fantasy adventure where you become a valiant knight on a quest to rescue the fair princess from the clutches of an evil dragon. You control the actions of a daring adventurer finding his way through the castle of a dark wizard who has enchanted it with treacherous monsters and obstacles. In the mysterious caverns below the castle, your odyssey continues against the awesome forces that oppose your efforts to reach the Dragon's Lair. Lead on, adventurer. Your quest awaits.
Now, this game is a Milton Bradley game, unlike some of the other ones we reviewed this time around, and came out the same year as the video game in 1983. The arcade game was a massive success. It used Laserdisc technology, which allowed sort of live animation to take place. it wasn't an overly complicated game. It had very little replay value because once you knew what to do, you could just breeze through the arcade. But essentially, you were playing as Dirk the Daring and making sort of decisions about what to do. It was really not an amazingly interactive game, but the technology was amazing. It led to a sequel and then to Space Ace, and it came out, and it's been ported to a lot of modern consoles. I have it both on the Xbox and on the Wii as well. But the NES port was just brutal. It was not Dragon's Lair at all. It was horrible. I would definitely not recommend it. Either way, the game itself is very, very interesting. And let's take a look at some gameplay and come back and do our final thoughts.
Alright guys, so here's Dragon's Lair. Actually a really nice cover. They actually used some screen clips from the actual game itself. And, you know, not a bad cover considering Milton Bradley sometimes doesn't have the greatest looking covers compared to Parker Brothers. Here's the board. It's actually 2 parts. There's just a generic little insert here. Mine's kind of bent, which makes it a little harder to play. And then you insert the Dragon's Lair castle on the top with Princess Daphne, of course, at the top of the castle. It's simple. There's just sort of a winding path and you land on different colors. So essentially, here's your components here. I wish they could have done something a little more visual for the pawns. They're pretty basic, just colored. You also get some Dragon's Lair cards, which are actually kind of cool. And there's different ones depending on what you do in the game. So you basically roll the die and you move your pawn around the board. If you land on white or yellow, you're safe. If you land on black, you can attack the other players of the game can attack you. Granted, my son and I played this with 2. It's probably a lot more challenging when you have 4 or 5 players. I think it's actually 4 is the max you can play. So when someone lands on the black, the other players can attack them using these cards. There's basically cards that will, cause things to happen to you. You can also get this one called Shift the Board. This is actually kind of unique because then you can move the board up or down or left or right, and that will put you on a new space. So now I'm on white here, so now the enemies can't attack me anymore. So those cards can be quite useful. The other cards are like, for example, you may get attacked and it says you'll need a sword. So in order to defend that card, so here's one here, for example, it says you need a sword card. So if I played that on the opponent, he would have to have a sword card in order to defend it. If he doesn't defend it, he goes back to the nearest yellow space. Essentially, the game is a race to the top and who can get to Princess Daphne first, I should say. And you keep battling each other and you keep falling back and forth. The big problem I had with this game is it was quick. Like, my son and I finished it in like 5 minutes because sometimes I don't have anything to attack with, and basically everyone just keeps going further and further up the game. Other than that, it's a really simple game. Like I said, if you probably played this with more players, it might be a bit more challenging, but that's Dragon's Lair by Milton Bradley.
Alright guys, my final thoughts on this game are, it's not a bad one. I'd give it like a 3 out of 5. The gameplay is decent. I like the action cards. The board, I wish they had something. I hate games that use like the inserts of the box as boards, like the Smurf game does this. There's a lot of games that do this. I don't like that about it. But otherwise, all being said, it's a very average game. My 10-year-old and I played it. The instructions are simple, which I like. You're not bogged down with, overly complicated instructions. But it's not an amazing game either. I luckily found this at the flea market for $10. The box I have, I don't know if it's water damage. It's hard to tell here, but it's like bent. And kind of, yeah, it's annoying. This game is very expensive. Going on eBay right now, people are asking over $100 for this board game. So if you can come across one at a decent price, I would highly recommend grabbing it, just for the resale value if you're planning on reselling it. For the play value, it's okay. It's not amazing, but it's definitely not bad. Popeye was really, really good. Fortnite Monopoly actually was really, really good. Pac-Man was good. This, I would say, would be like the 4th of them, and Qbert being the worst of the 5 I reviewed today. But either way, guys, I really appreciate you tuning in. Let me know in the comments if you like these board game series. Would you watch more if I kept doing them? I was hoping to do a part 2 for video games because I have more video game board games that I wanted to review. Or comment if these are games that you've played or learned about or enjoyed, or just give me some feedback on what you think about this series and if it's worthwhile going forward. It didn't get nearly as many views as my video game ones did, but that being said, maybe it's just getting people into it and building things up. It's hard to say, but either way, if you haven't subscribed, please hit that subscribe button, smash the like button to show some support, and comment below with anything you want to say. I really appreciate all the support and everyone tuning in. Stay safe out there, guys, and we'll talk to you soon with our next review. Have a great week.